Hey, Teacher Daniel here. Today we're going to go into sample ATC communication. So these are going to be some sample ATC interactions that you can listen to and then use in your flying training. So I will start off with some things that you can use right away that will help you in general with ATC communication. And then I'm going to talk about some scenarios in a towered airport and then in a non-towered airport. Let's get started. One, first thing is you can try to listen in on the communications at your airport. You can do so perhaps at the airport itself. They have the radio playing, because the dispatcher or someone at the airport that handles the planes is listening to the radio to hear air traffic, to hear the tower controller or the ground controller. You can maybe ask to listen to that, or I think even you can get your own radio and just listen to the interactions at the airport that you're at. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is you can, when you're flying or before you go out, is try to imagine, think about what you will receive, what instructions you will receive moving forward. So imagine you're at the aviation ramp and you're going to go to a certain runway. Okay, what taxi instructions will you probably receive to take you from the ramp to the runway? Now, that being said, be careful of what is called expectation bias, where you miss the air traffic control clearance, the tower or ground control clearance completely. But it's just to help you practice and think about what could be moving, what could be happening in your situation. Okay, those are two things. Three things is you can write this stuff down. You can write this down. I will have templates for you to use on my website that you can print and then you can use, or just use it as a PDF, and then you can just write on your iPad or whatever you're using. Fill out the information before having to speak. Let's get started. So, on average, in most aviation communications, the format is going to be you're going to say to whom you're talking to, then who you are, where you are, your intentions or your request, and any extra information that is asked from you or that is helpful or advisory in nature. So, for example, you are at your aviation ramp in a towered environment and you want to taxi to a runway, and you're talking to Sanford Ground, right? The ground controller. You would say Sanford Ground, right, to whom you're talking to. Let's say you're in a Cessna 172. The identifier is Cessna 222 Sierra Papa. Sanford Ground, Cessna, November 222 Sierra Papa at Aviation Ramp. Request taxi information alpha. Done, right? And alpha is the ATIS information. So then the response would be in the same format. It's going to be to whom they're talking to, who they are, the clearance, and additional information. So they would say Cessna, November 222 Sierra Papa. Now, in this part, they might shorten it to make it easier. They might just say 222 Sierra Papa. They might say 2 Sierra Papa. They might say Papa. Let's just say they say 2 Sierra Papa. 2 Sierra Papa. 2 Sierra Papa, Sanford Ground, taxi runway 22 via Bravo Charlie. Then you would repeat the same thing, but when you read back the clearance, you would say the clearance and the call sign. Taxi runway 22 via Bravo Charlie 22 Sierra Papa. If air traffic controller or ground or tower, if they shorten your call sign, then you are then required to use that shortened call sign. And another thing, additional information when let's say the situation, say 222 Sierra Papa, taxi runway 22 via taxiway Bravo Charlie, hold short at 22, be advised, birds in the vicinity, construction crane north of the airport, clouds coming in. Something like that. Do you have to say that back? You don't have to. Additional information you can just say Roger or copy. What you do have to repeat back is the runway that you are given and the altimeter setting, which would make sense. The runway to make sure that you're both talking about the same runway, and the altimeter setting to make sure that your altimeter is set to what the tower controller altimeter is for your altitudes, right? So you're taxiing along, and let's say you're going to take off. Second scenario, you're requesting takeoff. Same thing. But this time you'll be talking, say, to the tower controller. So you would say Sanford Tower, Cessna, and then would you be using the shortened call sign, or would you be using the new call sign, or your original one? So I would say use your original call sign, or use your original registration number, and then they can shorten it as well. So for example, if ground controller was calling you 22 Sierra Papa, when you're switching to the tower frequency, you would say Sanford Tower, Cessna November 222 Sierra Papa, holding short, runway 22, or if you want to use ICAO, you would say holding point, runway 22, fully ready. You can say fully ready, or you can say ready for departure. So you would say Sanford Tower, Cessna November 222 Sierra Papa, holding point runway 22, fully ready. It's ICAO. If you're in the United States, the issue even right now with ICAO phraseology is that most airports still are not familiar with it, even though they should be. So if they would say, I've had it happen as well, flying as an airline pilot, going to airports in the United States, and I would use ICAO phraseology, and they don't know the phraseology. That's because it's not used that often, right? And so if you get the response, say again, then you could say ready for departure, holding short of runway 22, ready for departure. So I'm going to say that again just to be sure, right? Who you're talking to whom you're talking to, who you are, where you are, your intentions, additional information. So Sanford Tower, Cessna 222 Sierra Papa, holding short, runway 22, ready for departure. Then they would say, so what do you think they would say based off of that? What do you think, if you were the tower controller, what would you say back if you wanted that plane to take off? Done? So it would be Cessna, November 222 Sierra Papa, runway 22, cleared for takeoff. And then what would you repeat back? Runway 22, clear for takeoff, Cessna November 222 Sierra Papa. Okay. Now let's say you're wanting to come back to the airport, at a towered airport. What would you say? The same setup. It would be Sanford Tower, Cessna, November 222 Sierra Papa, 10 miles north of the airport, request landing, information kilo. So what would they say back to you? Cessna 22 Sierra Papa, they shortened it. Sanford Tower, right base, runway 22. Here, I'm going to put a trick in this. Altimeter setting 29905, report base. Okay, so what would you say back to them? And what is extra? Done? Here we go. Right base, runway 22, right, your clearance. Right base, runway 22. Report base, because that's part of your clearance, right? And then additional information comes at the end. Altimeter setting 29905, because altimeter settings, you have to repeat it back to make sure you're on the same page. Cessna 222 Sierra Papa. Okay, now I want you, with this information, to try to tell, you don't have to tell me because you're watching the YouTube video, but think about what would the air traffic controller say to have you land. And the phraseology to land is clear to land. Okay. Cessna 22 Sierra Papa, Sanford Tower, runway 22, clear to land. And what do you say back? Runway 22, clear to land, and then your call sign, Cessna 22 Sierra Papa. Done. Okay, so you're noticing that there is a format. And like I said, I'm old-fashioned. I would use a pen and paper to write down what I'm going to be saying. That way I can read it And tell you what, a great exercise is after your lesson, you can, if they said something different, you can write it down. And then during your debrief with your instructor or on your own, you can go over what was said and practice that when you chair fly. So now let's look at non-towered airports. So in non-towered airports, no one really has to say anything. But in the interest of safety, it's always great to communicate on the radio, and also it's great practice. And the format is the same. The difference is that for a non-towered airport, if you're going to be staying in the airport environment, you want to use the radio identifier in the beginning and at the end of your communication. So you would say, let's say you're at Valkeria. The airport is called Valkeria. That's actually where I used to train at. You would say Valkeria traffic, because it's the airport traffic. Valkeria traffic, Cessna, November 222 Sierra Papa. Or you can say, or you can say Cessna and then just something that would identify your aircraft. So if your aircraft is blue and white, you would say blue and white Cessna. Either or, ultimately safety is the main thing. So if you think it's safer to say blue and white Cessna versus Cessna November 222 Sierra Papa in a non-towered environment, I'll leave that up to you. So let's just say we'll use blue and white Cessna. So blue and white. So you would say Valkeria traffic, blue and white Cessna. Let's see you're taxiing to the runway. Blue and white Cessna, taxiing to runway 5. And what are your intentions? Stay in the pattern, touch and goes. And you would finish it with Valkeria traffic. So same thing, every step when you're taking off. So if you're taking off, you could say Valkeria traffic, blue and white Cessna, taking off runway 22 Valkeria traffic. The same thing with the upwind. So try it for yourself. The upwind, the crosswind, the downwind, the base, and the final. Say it. Okay, so try blue and white Cessna, upwind, runway 22, Valkeria traffic. Valkeria traffic, blue and white Cessna, left crosswind, runway 22, Valkeria traffic, right for you. And then if you're departing from the airport or if you're landing, you would say that you're landing, or you would say, or let's say you're departing, you'd say Valkeria traffic, blue and white Cessna, downwind, runway 22, departing. If you're downwind, was it runway 5? It's runway 5. You're downwind. Was it departing southwest bound? So long. All right. So you're saying departing and the direction you're going, and that's it. So long is it's like bye bye. It's somewhat the unofficial bye bye. You can say it if you want to. You don't have to. But the most important part is that you get used to that structure and that you practice that. Now, let's say you don't know what to say. Let's say you're completely lost. Maybe the accent is hard. Maybe you don't understand. I have a video on things that you can say. I'll link it below. But if you follow that structure in your sample ATC communication, you will be fine. If you have any questions or if you want to practice with me, feel free to leave a comment below or go to my website. I offer a 30-minute consultation, but really just a chance to practice and help you out. So I look forward to hearing from you, and talk later.